Good evening and welcome to Money Matters. My name is Charlie Huntington. I am the Public Relations Chairperson for Pennsylvania Bio. Pennsylvania Bio is the statewide biotechnology organization which is focused on advancement for Pennsylvania's bioscience industries, which include medical devices, biotech, pharma, healthcare IT, amongst others. I want to remind our viewers that from time to time financial issues relating to life sciences or healthcare matters or companies may be discussed on this show. These discussions are not and should be not viewed as financial advice. Moreover, since this program is pre-recorded and shown at a later date, please keep in mind that the information may be dated. You always should check with your financial advisor before entering into any financial transaction. And now, here is how to send your questions to Money Matters to be answered on a later show.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our hosts and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, M-O-N-E-Y, -matters, M-A-T-T-E-R-S, TV.com.
I'm pleased to have with me as my co-host tonight Kimon Hatza, and our viewers will remember that Kimon is a business attorney with Millcrest Law, as well as a partner with Millcrest Law in Radnor, Pennsylvania. He concerns himself with life sciences, healthcare, and information technology. Welcome, Kimon.
Charlie, happy to be here.
I can't believe it's been 3 years since we started doing the show, but it's been a lot of fun to do these shows with you.
It has been great, and time really does fly.
It does. So we could ask each other enough questions to reminisce about the last 3 years, I'm sure, to keep our viewers interested all evening here. But if it's okay with you, I'd like to turn to Mary Fuchs. Mary's our guest for tonight.
Oh, absolutely.
So to introduce Mary, she is senior consultant of the Ideas to Innovation Network, which we will refer to as I2N on the show. As senior consultant for I2N, Mary directs program initiatives and resources to support emerging growth businesses throughout their entire life cycle by leveraging the assets of academic institutions and other partners. In addition to managing the program and the board, she works to connect emerging growth businesses with resources, helps companies with grants and tax credits, and supports 2 innovation centers and a co-working space in Chester County for technology and life science entrepreneurs. Prior to leading the I2N initiative, she worked with the Chester County Economic Development Council's Healthcare Industry Partnership, where she served as Director for Adult Training and Education Programs in Chester County for Delaware County Community College. Earlier in her career, she held marketing positions with both Quest Diagnostics and Pfizer Animal Health. Mary has an MBA from St. Joe's University. She has a Bachelor of Science degree in marketing from the University of Dayton. She's on the board for adult care of Chester County. And as a breast cancer survivor, she has a passion for helping to find a cure for that disease. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, can you, and our viewers will be somewhat familiar with Governor Rendell's Keystone Innovation Zones, and I say that because for the better part of 2 years, I did the show as a board member of BioStrategy Partners. Can you remind our viewers, please, what the Keystone Innovations, how they came about, what the
Sure.
Keystone Innovation Zones were and are designed to do, and tell us a little bit about I2N, please.
Sure. So as you mentioned, the Keystone Innovation Zones were initially created as part of the Rendell administration's economic stimulus package. And that was in 2004. From about 2004 to about 2007, 29 of these zones were created across the state of Pennsylvania. And the goal was to take technology and research that was being done in universities, help that spin out, create new companies, commercialize the technology and research, and ultimately create jobs in the region. Specifically, hopefully, for Pennsylvania graduates, college graduates. So it's a program through the Department of Community and Economic Development, and specifically through the Technology Investment Office of the state.
Do they typically, back in the biostrategy area, they had a life cycle of about 4 years. Is that typical are there new ones being created at this point?
There are not new ones being created at this
Okay.
point. We're still at 29 at this
Okay.
point.
Okay,
So I
great.
think that the last one was created in 2007.
Okay, great. And how about I2N?
I2N, as you mentioned, Ideas Times Innovation Network, is an initiative of the Chester County Economic Development Council, and it was really formed in 2012 when the Chester County Keystone Innovation Zone and the Delaware County Keystone Innovation Zone formally consolidated. And part of the reason to do that was really to be able to serve a broader reach of companies. The Keystone Innovation Zones are specific geographic zones, and so we wanted to really be able to help all startups, technology-based startups, in both counties and really throughout the region.
Right, I know some of those, I wasn't, University Science Center is and was one, and then biostrategy was basically the 611 corridor, so
Yes.
we go from Doylestown, we like to say, to Center City,
Yes.
and sort of hockey sticked out to Lankanaw.
I
So-
think it's certainly the biggest of the Keystone Innovation Zones. So in the Philadelphia region, they're the Delaware County KIZ, Chester County KIZ are still separate KIZs, even though the I2N formerly managed both of those. There's the Bio 611, there's Bucks County, the Navy Yard, and University City Science Center, KIZs.
The rest of them around the state, would they be pretty much clustered around big cities, or not so much?
There are some around big cities, but they're really more clustered, I would say, around universities.
Ah, okay, okay,
So like Greater Susquehanna includes Bloomsburg University.
okay.
Great, so it's the intention really to assist in getting, I guess, technology that's being researched and developed at universities that for many years tended to sit on the shelves at universities and not really, even if there was a commercialization opportunity, a lot of those things didn't really move forward. So the idea was to help get that.
Really help do that, yeah. Yeah, and the concept with the zones and creating that geography is that the companies or the individuals that were creating those companies would locate close to where that research was being done or was done initially.
Makes a lot of sense.
So in Chester County, it did evolve a little bit differently because the zone was set up primarily around corporate parks with the concept that the research or the technology was really being spun out of other existing companies in the region, as well as universities, but more so with companies. So the geography in Chester County is a little bit different than some of the other KIZs.
Okay. Where they might have a big university behind them.
Yes.
It's coming from industry rather than academia.
Yes.
Okay.
Mary, I know you and I had spoken a little bit earlier, but there must have been some initial funding, I guess, for I2N or, for the projects that it's working on coming out of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I was wondering if you could tell me, how much was that initial grant and how was it used?
Sure. So the initial grant for the KIZs was $250 in the first year. And the intent with the grants was that they would continue to get funding for up to 4 years, I think some did, on a declining grant basis. So the intent was always that these KIZs would become self-sustaining programs.
So it was 250,000?
250,000 in the first year.
Okay.
Yes, and that was it was used to help support operations. It was also used to help with intern funding with companies. Some cases it may be micro grants, numerous programs to help companies, understand what resources are available to them. And those are a lot of the initiatives that we still try to carry through today.
Great.
Were there additional grants after the initial ones, or?
There were additional grants. I2N has been very fortunate to have discovered in PA, developed in PA, or D2PA grant funding through DCED as well. And that helped start some of the innovation centers that we'll probably talk a little bit more about throughout the course of the evening in Chester County and in Delaware County. In addition to that, before Delaware County KIZ and Chester County KIZ consolidated, we received a competitive KIZ grant that we used for micro grants for companies, as well as some of the intern funding and some mentoring with startup companies.
Remind our viewers what DCED is.
Yes, the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development.
Okay. Okay.
So most of our funding from the state has come through the DCED
Okay.
through the Technology Investment Office, which is really looking at creating innovation in the Commonwealth.
Thank you.
I'm sure there were a lot of local parties that were supportive of your efforts. I was wondering if you could share with our viewers who some of those parties are, whether specifically or by,
Sure.
by category, I guess.
Sure.
It's a good point. It's a good question because so many of our guests have said, wait a minute, Philadelphia, unlike other markets, has so many silos within life science. And can we break the silos down and who's working together, who's not working together? It's a great question about who the partners are.
Yes, I would agree with that. And Pennsylvania Bio has been part of our board from the beginning. The initial application for the KIZ to the state was with the Chester County Economic Development Council and Penn State University, primarily through their Great Valley campus. In addition to that, on that initial application were Ben Franklin Technology Partners of Southeastern Pennsylvania and Drexel University. So regionally, the universities that have been very much involved with both the Delaware County and Chester County would be Villanova, Westchester, Delaware County Community College, Penn State we mentioned, and I'm not remembering one, Widener, I'm sorry.
Widener, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And so those are the ones that have primarily been involved with helping direct the program. In addition to that, there are numerous service providers that are engaged in helping these companies grow and succeed. And there's a complete list on our website because I don't want to forget anyone.
Okay.
Okay.
I can
And
certainly
what
refer.
is your website?
It is i2npa.org.
Okay, great. And you
Thank
mentioned
you.
service providers. Talk
Yes.
a little bit about the best features of this program, we'll call it, where you can leverage the Keystone Innovation Zone, the KIZ tax credits. Can you describe this to our viewers, please?
Sure. And I think that the access to the tax credits is one of the biggest benefits for startup companies in the state. And not only the KIZ tax credits, but the R&D tax credits, which are similar, and I can talk
Please.
about those a little bit as well. But the KIZ tax credits essentially look at a 2-year period of revenues for a company and then take a 50% of that increase up to $100,000. So companies do have to wait a little bit before they're able to access those funds, but once they apply for the tax credit and are awarded the tax credit and then file their taxes the following year, they can submit to sell their tax credit for cash. And when they sell that and they receive the cash, there aren't any restrictions on how that cash is used. So it can really, again, the companies have to wait a little bit to be able to apply, but it can really be that huge cash infusion that companies need, even though they may be selling them at a little bit of a discount, and there may be other fees associated with those. And depending on the timing of when they sell them, they may have to, they will regardless have to pay some tax on it. even so, it's still a tremendous benefit for companies that I continually hear that gap between probably $0 to $50,000 or $0 to $100,000 in funding is really what's missing and what companies need the most.
So if we think about it, and this may interest our viewers just to talk about the complete life cycle of startup companies. So we're talking
Sure.
about the industries would be technology, medical devices, healthcare IT, small upstart pharma, which is
Yes.
tough to do.
It
So
is.
you're a company which is going to be heavy on the R&D front. So chances are you're going to have more outflow than inflow. You may not be selling a product or even a service yet.
Probably
so
not.
you likely won't have taxes to pay. And at that point, the state says, okay, if you're not using the, there's a certain tax credit associated, we'll say, or your company can apply for this tax credit.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't need it, you could sell it potentially to a large employer who's presently making money, right? And
Yes.
it would be used to, these credits would be used to offset profits, i.e. taxes?
Yes.
Is that how the?
Yes.
Is that
Yeah,
how it
that's
works?
That is
Okay.
exactly. And it could be a large employer or it could be a wealthy individual that wants to buy.
Individuals can buy them as well?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned kind of the life cycle of the company, because the way that the Keystone Innovation Zones tax credits work is that a company needs to be located within the geographic boundaries of the KIZ for that 2-year period before they can actually apply for the tax credits. So a company, probably is going to be about 2.5 to 3 years old before they would actually have any return, any cash associated with that. The revenue in this case is more broadly defined in that those companies can use their grant funds that they may be receiving as part of their revenue calculation. So that's beneficial to a number of companies.
So do you have any, and maybe this is too broad to talk specifics and shut me up if it is, but is there a guide for how much of a discount somebody would get based on, I realize it's all negotiated, but is there a rule of thumb? If
It
somebody's
is.
getting a bad deal, what would that deal look like? Is that where
So
does it start, I guess? is the
I
question.
usually say to companies, they typically will get 80 to 90 cents on the dollar of the tax credit.
Wow.
Typically. There are cases sometimes where it may be less than that if somebody needs to kind of pre-sell their tax credit
Yep.
because they really need the cash, and I've had companies have that come up. So in that case, they get probably a little bit less.
So I would be buying, whatever this tax credit would be, I'd basically only have to pay 90% of what I would have had to pay.
If you were buying it, yes.
Yeah, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
And as an individual, I can see how that would be does the individual need to work within these industries or not necessarily so?
No.
Interesting.
And, for an individual to be able to, or to make it worth their while to go through the process, they would have to be a very significantly wealthy individual,
Okay.
I would say.
Okay.
So it is typically companies that use it.
And it's a credit, right? So it's reducing their taxes on a
It
dollar
is.
for
Dollar
dollar
for dollar,
basis.
right.
Right.
As opposed to deduction.
So you're buying it, just as an example, the maximum award under KIZ is $100,000 for any company per year, up to when the company reaches 8 years old. If you as an individual or as a company are buying that $100,000 tax credit award from a company, you might buy it at $90,000 and you're getting the $100,000 tax credit.
Do the parties normally know each other? Do they have prior knowledge of each other? Or
I would say usually not.
Okay.
There may be cases where they do. Oftentimes, the companies will go through a broker,
Okay.
or whether it's a specific organization that just brokers tax credits, or an accountant or attorney, and there are a number of individuals that can broker that.
Okay.
There are cases where they may sell it on an individual basis, and that's certainly just up to the company's choice.
Okay.
There are times where companies will form a consortium to get a better deal if they're going through a broker or just with the larger company in general. And I see that more often.
Okay.
I never get involved in that other
In the negotiations, yeah.
Right, other than to let a company know what their options are, but we never get involved in the actual brokering deal.
Okay. That's great.
Little bit of conflict.
Yeah, right.
So the R&D tax credits that I mentioned work very similarly, in that it's looking at a 2-year period as well. Instead of looking at revenue, it's looking at a company's research and development expenditures. And it doesn't have the age of the company or the geographic restriction that the KIZ tax credits do.
That's good.
Restriction or criteria, I should say.
Okay.
Now, I2N has 3 incubator sites and a co-working space. Can you tell our viewers about where these incubator sites and the co-working space are located and their respective, I guess, unique characteristics?
Sure. And I'll start with the life science one, since that may be the one of most interest to the group. So I2N collaborated with the Hankin Group in Eagle View. They're at 665 Stockton Drive to create what we've called the Innovation Center at Eagle View. And the idea is that it has smaller lab space available to companies than what they may find elsewhere. So in the space, they have some equipment already, and in their offices that are attached to the lab space, they would also be able to get like desk and chairs. So you don't have to have that initial expenditure. We're also working on shared equipment for the entire facility to be able to use there. And the idea is really to have companies that are in a similar industry be able to be there and work together and collaborate. We've had a number of events there, including a couple PA Bio networking events, to really get the groups to interact with each other out in that region. There tend to be a lot of companies, but they're a little bit further apart. They're spread out more than they are, if you would go to some similar type facility downtown, where there's higher concentration, I would say.
I've often wondered about this. Is there ever any tension, when you have people collaborating, because they're working in close quarters, they're sharing equipment, they may be in a similar field, but ultimately if people are developing an idea, that's going to be commercialized, I'm assuming at some point there are confidentiality aspects of that person's business that they want to keep things they want to keep confidential.
Absolutely.
So you can, does there come a point where there's some sort of tension? Is it difficult to work, I guess, in a collaborative space like that when you have, proprietary, software or other, intellectual property, I guess?
I've wondered about that as well. And I think I see that more with the life sciences companies than maybe with some of the technology companies where they're collaborating to solve some sort of problem through a hackathon, as an example. And I think that some of the life science companies, just by nature of what they're doing, and they're in a lab, kind of a little bit isolated, that kind of makes the collaboration at times a little bit more difficult. But at least being in the same building, they have more opportunity to interact with each other, even if they just bump into each other in the kitchen and say, "Hey, I'm working on this," and I know that's happened with a number of the companies that are located there.
Not to unduly prolong this question, but I know there are 2 other incubator sites. I'm assuming they're not life sciences.
They are
just
not.
Tell us.
So there's technology, which is a collaboration with Evolve IP and GPX Realty, located at the Evolve IP Corporate Center, and that's specific to technology. And there I often see groups just sitting at a common table, working in the same environment, even if they're at different companies.
Is that in Wayne?
That's in Wayne.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
And the other one is incubator / co-working space in Westchester called Walnut Street Labs. And again, a completely open environment and it's more technology specific with a little bit of healthcare IT and some other areas as well. And that, if you don't mind me just jumping back for a second, that was some of the grant funding that we got received from the state to help support some of those initiatives. And I should also mention that through Walnut Street Labs and some of the grant funding from the state, we've started a platform called Office Hours, which enables entrepreneurs to, through a website, connect with a potential mentor and set up meeting for roughly a half hour on a scheduled basis. Yep.
Mary,
Thank you.
as you know, we focus a lot on life sciences on this program. We do focus a little bit on other technologies and clean tech and what have you, but we really do have a heavy life sciences focus. A number of companies have come through I2N, that have gone on to succeed, that are in the life sciences space. We may have even had a couple of them as guests on our show previously. We're getting a little bit short on time, but could you give our viewers just a sense of one or two companies that you've worked with that have come through I2N?
Sure. You have had a few on the show, Andrew Rayum with Melior Discovery and Sean Blackburn with Y Prime are a few that I know that have been on the show as well. There's a company called Venatorex Pharmaceuticals located in Malvern that I would say is kind of an up-and-coming company. A few of the scientists from Protez that was ultimately sold to Novartis, then started Venatorex. And I would say they're looking for the next generation of anti-infective agents and pharmaceutical products.
It's Chris Burns, right?
Chris Burns, yes. There's another company called Prosthetic Innovations, which is in Delaware County, that looks at high-end prosthetics for very active people, so athletes, and they just graduated from I2N, meaning they just hit the 8-year mark.
Wow.
And are doing very well also.
That's great.
Mary, thank you.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we are already out of time, so we knew we had a lot of material to cover with you, and really appreciate you coming in.
Great. Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
It was a pleasure.
Thank
Kimon,
you.
as always, you did a great job, and we're
Thanks,
appreciative for 3 great years, and hope we can squeeze another
Keep it
3
going.
great years out of you, and
Yeah.
you'll have me back for another 3.
All right.
I want to remind our viewers that Money Matters is now available as an audible podcast on iTunes and Stitcher Radio, listed as Money Matters the Podcast for mobile devices. The video is available on our YouTube channel as well as our website. And I want to also remind viewers that our next guest is Jerry Ellman, who's an attorney with Ellman Technology Law. As always, your money does matter, and we appreciate you being here with us tonight. Good night.